I'm Betsy Scott. I'm the director of the Best Practices Research Alliance. Work here for IBACOS out of Pittsburgh, and we have three great people joining us today for our discussion. Great, and there are some questions that have come in that I'm going to float your way now as well. Some are for you guys from a builder perspective, and then others for Sandy on the form itself. One question that came in relates to the MLS system. A national MLS manager who works for Meritage Homes was asking, and I think this is a good question for both of you, what certifications do you attach to the form to support their selections, I guess, in the MLS system? And this is very specific. We would like to record this information as an attachment document in the MLS for help in finding comps for appraisers. Should this form be uploaded to every MLS listing we do along with certifications? So really the first part is more for you, Cliff, and any comments you have, Matt, on the builder side, and the second might be more geared towards Sandy.
Yeah, in terms of documentation, a lot of that is provided on site, and we have that. The homeowner gets copies of a lot of this information, and certainly through the inspection process on site throughout the homes, whether it's whether we're looking at blower door tests, or we're doing pre-drywall inspections or HVAC continuity tests, that kind of stuff. All of that's done on site. So relative to attachments, we have all that documentation for the home builder, and if we need to give it to the appraiser, we can. In terms of MLS, I don't see why we couldn't provide documentation and attachments like that. We just have not done it in the past.
Okay. Any comments?
I mean, I don't know that anybody's questioned the validity of what we're putting on the MLS form, but to any piece of information on MLS, if they have a question, we're happy to document it for them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with what Cliff said. We take all our even evaluation information, and we do a homeowner's manual with every home, normally on an electronic basis. We can just upload that stuff into the homeowner's personal file. And I think a huge thing, and we're guilty of this as anybody, is because most of what we do is under contract, so it doesn't get sold necessarily through multi-list unless it's a spec, which we haven't done for a while, obviously. So, we need to be more proactive, taking that data and loading it into the MLS system. We've in St. Louis, we've had green on our MLS system for years now. I think we were one of the early ones, anyway, in the country to have it. So it's to our own benefit to share that information on MLS.
Sandy, any comments?
Yes, in teaching appraisers filling out the addendum and valuing green, we encourage them to get a copy of these reports, the HERS Index and the green certification, the worksheets that go along with them. And another thing that we tell them to look on the attachments in the MLS, on their comparables. One of the problems we run across around the country, maybe not in your specific area, but we have agents that are filling out the green and the HERS indexes without any support, and when we go to do the verification, we find out they really aren't green. So putting the attachments with it will help the appraiser quickly identify this is green, and it saves them time in their research and their verification, and they'll know if they're true comparable or not. So I would strongly encourage you to include those with the MLS and with the addendum.
And I know one of the recent efforts that Sandy and I have been involved in, myself more tangentially, is looking with the Council on MLS and some of the other key groups in the industry at green fields and an implementation guide that's being put together to add that information to the MLS system. At the meeting that I mentioned earlier in DC last week, they talked about the green fields in MLS, and when they're available, they said they're being highly underused, because I don't think people understand how to use them, and that information can be included. So, but there's very high correlation between what's on the appraisal addendum form and what's available to you in the MLS fields. And even if you're not selling your homes through a broker, if you're selling them directly to yourself and you otherwise wouldn't be using the MLS system, Sandy and her colleagues use that to do valuations. So if you plug in your information, there will be more comparable home information in the system that's available that will help move the industry toward that direction of actually having things that you can compare your homes to and you getting better values out of that as well. So that was something we talked about last week that I would highly encourage that you take a look at and talk to your sales folks and everyone internally about providing that information, whether you use it directly or not. It's a good practice to follow. Then from a form perspective, there were a couple of questions related to two technical fields, Sandy, that I hope you can comment on. One is related to Windows. I believe there were low E and double pane were a couple of the options of checkboxes in those form fields for Windows. The question was, would window U factors and solar heat gain coefficients be better metrics to include there, really because they're kind of the window equivalent of an R factor for insulation. So did you look at including that information higher up in the form, or is that something that you would suggest is included in comments at this point?
That would be something I would suggest you put in comments if you feel it's relevant to your market area. The reason we didn't go into that detail is how many buyers would come in and ask for that specification. The appraiser is always looking at it from a buyer and seller's perspective, and what is the market asking for? Typically, it's I want a house with low E windows, I want a house with triple pane or double pane windows. So that's the terminology we use. In some areas, we got a little more specific because of the information the appraiser gained from it in the valuation section, such as the HERS rating or the envelope rating. That does have some meaning to the appraiser in the valuation section. Not that the windows don't, that we're trying to keep it, the terminology standardized so that buyers and sellers also can understand the addendum.
Okay. Now, on the form, there were two bits of information that relate to this question that was submitted to us. One is the HERS rating, and the other is PV, whether that includes PV or not. I know you have, in one area, you have the HERS rating information where you would put the score, and there's a whole set of information dedicated to PV in a separate section. Has there been any confusion, or what was the thought process behind the HERS score that's there? Is it intended, if you have photovoltaics, to include that in the HERS score, or would it be best to keep that information separate in the PV section?
Keeping the HERS index, considering the solar PV in the solar PV section, I think that's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. You can do it either way as long as you explain how it's been done.
Okay.
I had that question across the U.S. before where they're not quite sure what to do with it. As long as you explain what you're doing with the ratings and anyone can pick it up and read it and understand it, then we've got it made. So I've seen it done both ways.
Okay, so if it includes, for example, if they do include the PV value in the HERS rating, it would be best to note that as part of the comments as well, so that the appraiser understands that part of that HERS rating comes from renewable energy in the form of the PV system.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Perfect. Let's see. One other, is the green addendum mandatory nationally or mandatory by individual request?
The addendum is not mandatory by anyone. At this point, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA have not adopted it as one of their required forms. They do not discourage it at all, and it does provide, like I say, that standardization that they need. However, they've never made a forward pledge to make it a requirement. So it's something that it's individual with the appraiser, with the lender, with the builder, and the more we see people using it, I think it will be adopted sometime in the future, hopefully in the near future.
Now, an interesting point on that is the Department of Energy folks and some of the U.S. Green Building Council folks last week, and this is just going to be the last comment for today, but some of those folks last week mentioned that from a programmatic level, if they have a lot of homes, for example, in the Department of Energy that are the Energy Star, and you'll have to correct me, for some reason I can't think of it right now, the high performance rating for existing homes through Energy Star that we talked about earlier. The DOE is looking to actually make sure that the form is completed for any of the projects that are part of Building America research, so that there is a green addendum form that goes along with all of those projects. Some of them are existing homes and some of them are new homes. So I would encourage you to think about it this way as well from a builder perspective. Even though it's not mandatory, there are a lot of home information that's going to be put out there through Lead for Homes, through Energy Star, through existing home programs. Just want to make sure that we end up with as much information and comparables on new homes as we do as the existing homes, because the last thing that I think this form is intended to do is to end up resulting in renovated existing homes getting better ratings because the information is being captured than some of the newer homes that are doing far, far better in the marketplace. So again, consider if you're not selling through the MLS, all of those existing homes are going to be in there, so you're going to want your new homes in there as well.